So my intention with this presentation was to make it look like a punk rock girl's diary. Like the director of this project was scratching in notes and doodles on the project with lyrics from her favorite bands, providing inspiration for the oral history project. The Women of Rock Oral History Project is centered on constructing a more comprehensive history of rock music as a whole by creating a well publicized, diverse, and accessible collection of personal histories, according to the project's About page. Many women identifying people have largely been kept out of the rock music canon. The goal of the project is to record the narratives of women, trans, and gender nonconforming artists for the sake of rock music history. Frustrated with the lack of easily accessible information on influential women led rock bands, Tanya Pearson took it upon herself to close the gender music gap, as she says on the project site. Tanya is a public historian focusing on stories like those included in the Women of Rock project. She is also a musician herself and has a bachelor's degree in American Studies with concentrations in oral history and archives. At a symposium focusing on the history of censorship in 2014 at her alma mater, Smith College in Massachusetts, Tanya birthed the idea for Women of Rock. Transcripts and physical records of Tanya's work are housed in the Women of Rock section of the Sophia Smith Collection of Women's History at Smith College. The scope of the Women's History Collection at Smith College is to collect, preserve, and make accessible records documenting their history of women and other gender minorities. The collection has documents regarding women in the arts, in literature and writing, government, religion, social work, politics, and STEM and higher education. Tanya decided on long form personal and professional interviews as the best way to document women musicians. The members of alternative band Veruca Salt were her first interview in 2014. Tanya starts the interviews with the interviewees' childhoods and expands on their artistic careers from there. Tanya has also supplemented the project with various live events, including panels and live performances. Tanya is also an advocate for addressing gender biases on Wikipedia and in the Library of Congress subject headings. She has also held Wikipedia edit-a-thons through the Women of Rock project in order to address these biases. Funding for the Oral History Project has come from small grants, including the Rosenthal Fund Grant from Smith College and the Helen Gurley Brown Magic Grant. The project is otherwise self-funded and sustained by volunteer labor. A fundraiser has been established in order to keep the project moving. Interviewees have also donated items for auction, and the project has merchandise for purchase as well. Publications such as Bust Magazine, LA Weekly, and Nasty Gal have all praised and promoted the Oral History Project, saying the project breaks up an age-old boys club, and in a time with the Me Too movement and women refusing to be silenced, the Oral History Project feels increasingly necessary. Tanya has interviewed around 30 women, including Cindy Wilson of the B-52s, Josephine Wiggs of the Breeders, Patty Chamel of Hole, Shirley Manson from Garbage, Mary Timony from Helium, and Melissa Aufdumar from the Smashing Pumpkins. One of my favorite women in rock is Exene Cervenka from the LA-based punk band X. Tanya interviewed her at her home in California in 2018. In the interview, Exene talks about her childhood in Illinois, raising her sister in Florida, and the band's appearance in the 1981 LA punk scene documentary, The Decline of Western Civilization. Another favorite is of JD Sampson, the first queer woman Tanya interviewed. JD is a member of the Tigre, one of Kathleen Hanna of Bikini Kill's many bands. During the interview, filmed at JD's home in New York, Tanya asks about JD's background as a visual artist, coming out as a lesbian at 15, and her time post the Tigre as a DJ and producer. A third favorite is punk musician and author of Violence Girl, From East LA Rage to Hollywood Stage, a Chicana punk story, Alice Bagg. The hour-and-a-half interview chronicles Alice's life growing up as a first-generation American in Los Angeles in the 60s and 70s. Alice is also a fellow feminist and women in rock activist, often speaking and performing at events. As of 2021, Tanya has recently released a book titled Why Marianne Faithfull Matters. As for the Oral History Project, though, Tanya is currently on hold due to financial reasons. While working on promoting her new book and working towards a PhD at the University of Massachusetts, Tanya is actively crowdsourcing in order to get the Women of Rock project up and moving again. As mentioned, the project is at a momentary standstill. However, Tanya remains hopeful for the project, saying that it has the potential to change the way scholars and the general public talk and write about music. The more interviews there are, the larger the footprint, and the greater the potential for upending the current popular narrative. Tanya's goal has always been to remove all of the categorizations that women are subjected to and create a collection that accounts for race, gender, and sexuality, and various musical subgenres within the broader context of rock music. In an interview with the Women's International Music Network, Tanya says her main goal is to publicize and sustain the project. A feature-length documentary and book are in the works based on the oral history project. I see the book and the documentary as vehicles for reaching a larger audience and attracting funding, she said in the 2018 interview. High-profile artists such as Exene Cervenka from X and Cindy Wilson from the B-52s have helped propel the project forward. As per the Women of Rock website, the digital interviews will be published by the University of Massachusetts Press sometime this year. This will ensure that the project is cemented as an oral history project and stays properly cataloged at a research-based university for the benefit of scholars and the general public in the future. Currently, the interviews conducted by Tanya are kept at Smith College, with Tanya holding the rights until 2025. They will then be passed on to the college. Some transcripts are available for select interviews, and remaining transcripts will be available after 2025. There are 167 digital files currently in the collection, including the video interviews themselves, select transcripts, and video footage of panels and images from the aforementioned supplemental projects. Here is a clip from the Women of Rock teaser trailer uploaded to the project's YouTube in 2019.
Not a fair playing field. That's what's happened traditionally to women, is we've just been written out of histories.
So it all has to do with documentation. That's why it's important that you're doing something like this.
As previously stated, the project is currently on hiatus. Tanya is searching for volunteers and donations to get the oral history project back up and moving. I will leave a link for the fundraiser if anyone feels inclined to support financially. If not, I'm sure Tanya would love a follow on Instagram, Twitter, and/or Facebook to further spread the word. I'll include those links as well as links to the special collections page from Smith College, the project's YouTube, so you guys can watch interviews, and a Spotify playlist I made featuring some of my personal favorite women of rock. Thank you guys.